Hello Wolfpack, we're on EOS today. We said we're going to be doing an analysis on EOS yesterday. Our last analysis was on a variety of coins including ADA, Polkadot and XRP, so make sure to check that out. We did that just a couple of days ago, but EOS is the topic of attention. I've got a lot of messages about it on Telegram in the recent days because a bit of news has come out on EOS that is concerning to a lot of people. We're going to be going over that news briefly. It essentially involves EOS's ICO in 2017, in which basically the original offering of the coin was inflated by wash trades, which is basically people manipulating the price to a certain extent. But we're going over that. We'll head into that news article in a second, but we have the weekly chart on EOS. We have the 4-hourly chart, the daily chart, in which we can go over some potential fractals for the end of the year price. We have the Bitcoin pair as well, that we're going to be going over at some point on the weekly chart. And we also have CoinMarketCap and Gemini, where we can discuss the supply and kind of what's happening there with the circulating supply and max supply on EOS. We can start off obviously with the most important piece of news, and we have an article here from Cointelegraph with the title reading, new research claims that 21 accounts pumped the $4.4 billion EOS ICO with wash trades. Obviously big accusations here coming from, big corporations as well, that could be potentially, be threatening to EOS if it was actually serious. But all we need to do is look in the second paragraph of this article to realize that the research does not accuse Block 1 itself of any wrongdoing. So this was actually people outside of Block 1, not involved with EOS itself, potential third-party or individual investors, market manipulators manipulating the price. So EOS cannot actually, and Block 1 cannot get into any legal trouble for this. That's very, very, very important to note. And the researchers from the University of Texas never actually suggested that EOS or Block 1 should get in trouble for this. So keep in mind your investments are safe. There's not going to be any hidden lawsuits from the SEC. From what we can gather here, from what I can gather from this article, there's not going to be anything like that. So it's kind of all in the clear here. We have to remember that, this is a coin and this is a project that's backed by, PayPal's co-founder, Peter Thiel. We've got billionaire hedge funds. As you can see, Alan Howard over here. We got Lewis Bacon, massive people on Wall Street who believe in this product, who helped launch the Bullish Exchange, which is the name of their new exchange that is targeted towards institutional investors to a certain extent. That was released just a couple of weeks ago, I think, is the public release date of it, a couple of weeks ago, if I'm correct. Haven't checked it out personally yet. I will definitely have to do that at some point, but I've heard positive things about it. And, these researchers from the University of Texas essentially exposed this kind of wash trading that was going on within EOS and the initial offering of EOS in 2017. And obviously it's very scary to see articles like this, and that's why, sometimes we get panic selling because people see the titles of the articles and they see people who misunderstand the information and post it to social media without actually fully understanding what the article involves and what the allegations are actually about. And that's when you get a lot of panic. But rest assured, it doesn't seem to be the fault of anyone on the inside. So there's essentially nothing wrong with what has happened in that ICO. A lot of people would have lost a lot of money because of it, and I hope that those wash traders were, found and put to trial for what they did, of course. But it is not the fault of Block 1. That's the important note. Now, with that aside, we can look into what is going on with the price action in EOS. We can look on the weekly chart first, because this, in my opinion, is the most important chart in crypto, the weekly chart and the daily chart. The weekly chart gives you a good understanding of what is happening on a macro basis. When in doubt, zoom out. That is a kind of key phrase that crypto traders use very, very often. When in doubt, zoom out. It's not very useful getting caught up in the hour-to-hour or day-to-day price action too often. If you can't identify the trends on smaller time frames, zoom out and look for the bigger picture. So you can see on the bigger picture here that there has been a pretty clear blue resistance line forming on EOS since January, when the initial breakout took place. We can see that this initial resistance line acted as a support line for the initial run-up in the bull market. So it started off here in January. We retested it multiple times here in March, and we also retested it on the initial capitulation in May. We bounced off of it first, and then over the coming weeks, as selling pressure exceeded what the support line could hold, we broke through below into our critical support area, in which we were able to pick up some EOS in our Telegram group and make some decent profits. But recently as well, we have highlighted this in the Telegram group as well. A couple of weeks ago, we have made an attempt to break through back above this support line, which is very bullish for EOS, and it basically represents that we had a brief drop below that upwards trend, and now we're well and truly back in the upwards trend this week. We can see, on the last weekly close, which closed yesterday, and I'm filming this today, obviously on the 6th of September in Australian time. So yesterday we had that close above the support line, and we're coming down probably to retest it on this week's close before heading up and having a similar spike. Because look, when we retest this support line, what we're doing is essentially reassuring the buyers, reassuring everyone in the EOS market that, hey, look guys, we're good to go here. We have some solid support. We're not going to drop any lower than this. Let's get ready for the next move up. That's what it's basically saying in a verbal sense on a very simplistic level. And you can see that every time we have retested this support line, we've seen a bounce. We had a bounce here in January from the first retest of 144% over the coming weeks. We had a bounce here in March of over 166% in the coming weeks. And we had a bounce, if we could call that a retest. I guess you couldn't really call that a retest, but in May, when we came down just before we dropped below, we had a bounce off of this support line of about 83% before dropping below. We're yet to see a bounce now, and that's what I'm expecting in the coming weeks, especially as Bitcoin makes some decent moves upwards of 51k that we've seen yesterday, and we saw a weekly close on Bitcoin above 51k, which gives the market a lot of confidence. We have noted in our Telegram group that 52.6k is what we're looking at on Bitcoin next. If we can close above 52.6k on the daily chart, but especially the weekly chart, I can't really see a scenario where the bears can kind of claim that this is a dead cat bounce anymore. I think that that's just a full bull market continuation in which we just make higher highs, and until we reach our all-time highs potentially within the next month. So that's what I'm looking at for EOS on the weekly chart. If we look over on the 4-hourly chart to get a good kind of indication of what's happening on short-term price action. Actually, one more thing about the weekly chart that I will note is we have seen a bullish MACD cross, and we're seeing that histogram starting to fill up green again, which means that we're probably, it's a supporting factor that we're going to be seeing that bounce off of this support line within the coming weeks. So I'm expecting a retest of this red resistance box in the coming weeks for EOS for sure. And we have to keep an eye on, another thing we have to keep an eye on, this 75. As you can see on the RSI, 75 is a zone of kind of resistance between 75 and 74, in which every single peak we've made after a bounce of the support line has been rejected down. So keeping an eye on 75, that's where I'd be looking to take profits, wherever that hits. So on the 4-hourly chart for EOS, we're seeing a pretty clear upwards trend with a variety of kind of consolidation periods when Bitcoin was pushing against that 50k resistance barrier that we were kind of talking about before. We saw an upwards trend from the bottom here in July. We broke out of a long-term symmetric triangle, and we kind of just ran up to the upside following that Gaussian channel and holding it for support. We had some sort of double or triple bottom, depending on how you want to look at it over here between the end of August and the start of September this month, and we've seen a straight direct upwards trend ever since. We have taken that $6 resistance zone, which you would have seen on a larger scale, is a pretty fundamental resistance zone. What I'd be expecting in the next couple of days is a retest of this $6 resistance zone for support before moving up again, as we see a kind of retest of 51k support on Bitcoin. It would not be abnormal for that to happen, because as you can see on the volume profile, we have a kind of massive gap in buying and selling in this area. So we need to kind of reassure the bulls that there is buying in that area, reassure them that there is some confidence, and we're not just going to drop straight below that. So that would be definitely bullish to see some downwards price action to $6 before we potentially start to move up to higher resistance zones, which we can see at $7.33, for example. And of course, this red box up here at $9 and $7. Another thing I want to talk about on EOS, guys, is the max supply and total supply, which is something that people have messaged me about on Telegram when I've advocated for EOS, because I am a big supporter for EOS, as you guys would already know. That is probably, the only kind of problem that I can see with EOS is the supply problem. We can see that on Gemini here, and obviously on the EOS white paper. EOS has a total max supply of 10 billion coins. Currently, we only have about 1 billion coins in circulation, just under 1 billion coins in circulation. So obviously a lot of supply to come into the market, which could be seen as slightly bearish for some people. I don't think it's bearish because there is a system in which EOS is released onto the market, which you can find on their white paper. They can't just print or mint a certain amount of coins and just chuck them onto the market and then the price just plummets. There's a set growth rate, as you can see, some sort of inflation rate that EOS has. I think it's 5% per year or something like that, or per quarter. It's very sustainable, and it doesn't lead to any sort of massive gaps in prices and massive dumps in price or anything like that. If we look at market cap on EOS, we can see that the market cap is very, very similar to what the price was, which is great to see. Whereas if you go on a coin, for example, I'm just taking out of thin air here, if we look at a coin like Dent, where we have supply problems, we can see that if we jump over to the Dent chart here, wait for it to load, we can see that on the all chart, the price, it looks like Dent is, critically undervalued and a long way away from its all-time high. But if we head over to the market cap, we can see that we're actually, in terms of total amount of investments in Dent and total amount of money in the Dent, coin, we're way above the all-time high. And that's what, supply can do. It can confuse people and make it seem like you're a lot lower than you actually are. It makes the price hard to move. EOS doesn't have that problem on a large scale, so it's not so much to worry about unless you're holding EOS for years and years and years. It shouldn't be that much of a concern. So that's good. And the last thing I want to talk about at EOS is where it could go potentially by the end of this cycle. Now, I've talked about this in my last video on EOS I did about a month and a half ago, and I had this fractal here on EOS that, it was really bad timing, I will say. I released this fractal onto my TradingView account, which I don't really use, so don't really feel obligated to follow that, but I used it at a certain point in time a few months ago. I released this fractal, which basically highlighted that this area here, this green box, looked a lot like this area here, and I stand by that. But due to the fact that the market was overvalued due to, preemptively pumping ahead of cyclical theory from PayPal news and Tesla news, we kind of had that May capitulation, which threw this fractal off. But I still stand by the fact that we could be seeing up to 75 USD on EOS by the end of this cycle, 100%. 75 USD sounds very, very reasonable. If you look at the last all-time high, that is only a 3x from the last all-time high. Very, very conservative. If you look at what altcoins did in the last cycle, high cap altcoins, that were around from 2014, they were 20xing, 10xing their all-time highs from the last cycle. This is only a 3x, and that takes into account diminishing returns. It seems pretty good to me. This fractal made a lot of sense because it also lined up with a perfect retest of this resistance zone, which would be our previous all-time high if this played out. But obviously, it's not really the case anymore. What we can see, if we look at a bit of a more conservative fractal, is that we had this sideways period when EOS was released into the market. We saw an initial pump. We can compare this to this sideways period and then the initial pump, so you can see the similarities. We had a correction and a scooping pattern in which we were kind of flattening out or, rounding out in the bottom. We had that here as well. And then we had a massive move up to finish off the bull market, as you can see in 2018. And we might be seeing a massive move up similar to that. And I think that move will be taking us to 75K. So in terms of, this fractal not entirely being, on point due to the May capitulation, I think that the fractal still kind of maintains. We're seeing a very, very similar price action, price movement from what we saw in the last bull market playing out here. But it seems to be on a smaller scale. I think that won't matter once EOS gathers the attention of the market, because keep in mind, guys, coins like this, 2018, 2017, being 3 years old or 4 years old in a space, which is cryptocurrency, that is only a decade old, is actually, it makes you quite old. This is what we call dino coins. And they're kind of, a second thought in these new bull markets, in which all these new coins, Solana, Polkadot, all these new coins are pumping, and these coins kind of get left behind until the very end, of course, when people are looking for coins that are still on the ground, which will be all of the dino coins that were neglected at the start of the bull market, and they will be the last ones to pump. And I think EOS definitely has some fundamentals to push that rally very, very high to 75 USD, which is my prediction on EOS. The Bitcoin pair on EOS, what can you really say about Bitcoin pairs on Dino coins? They're always going to be in a downwards trend. But what we can say is that we have a resistance zone here at 11,000 sats, and we have a few resistance zones at 4,000, 2,000, and the bottom out support here at 800 that we don't really want to be seeing a drop below. But, at most here on EOS, I'm probably expecting a jump up to this resistance zone at 4,000, 5,000 sats. You can never really expect coins on their Bitcoin pairs to go very, very high, because there simply is way more coins in the market than there was in previous bull runs, and there's more money, spread out to more places. I think there's 10 times the amount of altcoins as there was in 2017 and 2018. So the only way that EOS is really going to get to its all-time highs on its Bitcoin pair is if it shoots up to like number 2 on market cap, which I'm not expecting by any means. I think there's definitely coins that are way more deserving of that. But I think that EOS's current place, it's around 29th right now. It has been circulating in the top 10 for multiple years. Before the last couple of months, it could get back to the top 10 100% with its $75 move. All right, guys. So that is my video on EOS. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Make sure to check out my previous EOS analysis to get a bit more of an in-depth look at the fundamentals of EOS, which I didn't really cover in this video. I have plenty of other coins I've analyzed on the channel, so go and check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.